Being productive is not just about getting things done. Being productive is about being the best abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Smaller the change, the longer it lasts. So I always say, plan your life around your salah, don't plan your salah around your life. You can outsource everything, intelligence, etc., but you cannot outsource spirituality. We all struggle with social media. It is designed for distraction.
This episode of Empowered by Islam 21C, our new weekly podcast where we collaborate with leading voices to discuss Islam's solutions to 21st century challenges and trends.
Assalamu alaikum. Salam. So this is Brother Mohammed Faris, alhamdulillah, from the Productive Muslim website, and that's called Productive Muslim Company. We had an opportunity, and we've got a live audience special. Make some noise. Right, so we're going to have an audience kind of special today. This room is full of your mashallah tabarakallah fans of the Productive Muslim brand. Even myself, I remember, we went to the Sabil, was it 13 years ago? We benefited then. Like I said, I wish I had implemented more of the stuff to be more productive since then, but this is mashallah, a lot of fanboys here. Mashallah, where's Sheikh Mohammed Aku from Holland, mashallah, he was saying that his organization benefited greatly. So let's open up the floor for questions, inshallah, and we can start that way. Don't be shy, brothers. All right, go on. We've got one the gentleman in the front row.
Assalamu alaikum. Maybe the first question is, everyone when he starts with certain products like books, they have a certain trigger that has happened in their life, which has made them very ambitious to go fully into it, like you have had with the Productive Muslim and the Barakah Journal and other kinds of things as well. So what was your trigger point at the time, if you could bring us back to it, which led you to this whole movement, you could say?
And we just happen to have, by a stroke of qadr, the books right here. Alhamdulillah, the Productive Muslim book and the Barakah Effect. Go ahead.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa rasulillah. The story of the blog and the journey of Productive Muslim started with an itch. I call this a scratch your own itch. And the itch was, basically, I was unproductive. I was busy. I felt busy. I felt overwhelmed. At that time, I was doing my master's degree. I was a student. I had 2 part-time jobs. And I just felt overwhelmed. I'm like, here I am, a student, and I barely can manage my time and get things done. And tomorrow I have a family and kids and all that stuff. How will I balance it all? So that was the itch. And initially, the journey was to kind of learn what's out there into productivity space and just share that learning on a blog. But after time, a while, I started asking the question, where in our deen does it talk about productivity as a concept? Where in the Quran, where in the seerah, where in the hadith, this concept of productivity is there? Now, when you think of productivity, we think it's a very sort of capitalist, Western, secular concept. But if you were to look at this concept and redefine it from our own Islamic worldview, from a perspective of God-centeredness, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're here to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, perspective of the akhirah, perspective of making purpose and impact, it opens a whole different worldview. Being productive is not just about getting things done. Being productive is about being the best abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala across all areas of your life, as a family person, as a business person, as a student, etc., etc. So that shift was the spark that got me excited. And specific. What year is this? So 2007, the blog started as a blog, and then I shut the website down 2 months later. I said, a stupid idea. Who would ever read this stuff? And then subhanAllah, mid 2008, 2 things happened. First, a 10-year-old boy emailed me. He goes, hey, I loved your article. Why did you stop the website? So till today, I said, subhanAllah, that boy gets all the ajr for me restarting. And the second reason was this hadith of Prophet Muhammad that said, Burika li ummati fi bukuriha. And at that time, you hear things like 5 a.m. club and the morning routines and all that's craze. I'm like, this idea of barakah. I mean, that's honestly the essence of productivity, the more with less. In the sense that you could have all the best calendar system, the best apps, the best life hacks, but to achieve more with less and get this gift of barakah is so powerful. So that was the spark. So, I need to understand what this means. What does it mean to be productive from our own unique faith perspective? Not trying to import what's out there, but really redefine this whole space. What does it mean to be productive when we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our goal, akhirah is our inshallah ta'ala purpose, and to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What does that mean to manage your energy, your focus, your time holistically? And that's kind of the journey, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Next question. Come on. Bismillah. I think Marseille had a... Did you have a question?
My question was, you gave us the great advice to delete all social media apps from our phone. And of course, this is the number one thing when it comes to productivity. But in my case, for example, I'm using social media not only for, let's say, to kill my time or for entertainment purpose. I use it also for my business. So it's not so easy for me to just delete all social media apps. So what would be your advice for someone like me?
So the thing with social media, again, let's be honest. We all struggle with social media. It is designed for distraction. There's multi-million-dollar budgets that put into designing every element, from the algorithms to the color to the design. It's designed for distraction. And from that premise, honestly speaking, I speak about myself here. I know that I'm weak. I know that I cannot find it hard. I might go in for a business purpose, but I'll end up wasting for a few more minutes and sometimes a few hours. Sometimes it just takes over your mind. And sometimes you see an image that disturbs you, and then you think about it later. So for our own personal health, for our own spiritual health, mental health, I recommend to delete the apps. Now, you need it for business, and I know this is what I do personally. I know it sounds extreme, but it's the only way that I found that worked for me. If I need to post something, I'll download the app, I'll post, and I'll delete again. Now, it sounds crazy, sounds extreme, but it's the only way that I've found to able to distance myself and not get... Because then I question myself, yes, it's convenient to have it, but what's the cost? See, the problem with social media is it's not like smoking or some of these sort of normal social ills, which you kind of know the bad effects. It feels good. And especially when you start justifying it. I mean, not just say business reasons or personal reasons, I'm connecting with family, but we don't realize the opportunity cost. We don't realize the cost it has on our prayers, the cost it has on our concentration, the cost it has on our families. I mean, let's be honest, even if you're not checking social media in front of your kids, but you're thinking about what you saw, or you're affected by what you saw, and your mood changes. So I'm for our own health and sake, we're just not designed to be bombarded with so much imagery, so much content, so much. One moment we're seeing somebody dying, and one moment we see somebody singing and dancing. I mean, that's just not normal to have those just bombarded in ourselves. So for our own health, for our personal, spiritual health, I say just take it off and have systems in place. If you want to have, let's say, twice a day check-in, have some kind of process, do the thing of downloading, that's the way I recommend. Again, I know myself, and that's what I found. If someone came up with a better strategy, bismillah, but I found that to be the strategy, at least even for small periods of time. Say weekends, delete. Or some kind, come up with a way, just be intentional. Don't be a victim. Don't let your phone hijack you. You be intentional. You say, no, I'm the master of my phone. The phone is not my master, basically. And I hope inshallah helps you.
I mean, just like to say, remember to like and subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, TikTok, whatever. No, but it's a great point. I mean, we've been kind of talking about social media, the ills, for years, and one of my personal beliefs is it's one of those things you can check it out in 100 years if anyone's watching this. I think in 100 years' time, I think every fiqh council on earth is going to be like, what took them so long? This is completely haram or destructive to just our human agency. I really recommend a book by Shoshana Zuboff called The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism, because it deals with this from root to kind of tip, the branches, the threat to human agency, the threat to the sustainability of human, will and lives and societies and so forth.
And actually, two more books on this. One is called Fiqh of Social Media by brother of mine, Umar Uthman. Another book called The Anxious Generation, and talks about the impact that phone usage has on our children, especially on girls and also on boys as well. So if us as parents can't be role models for our children and can't show them how we've mastered and took over and be able to tackle this, then what hope we have for our children? So,
but I would say, normally I'm always saying, get off social media and that kind of stuff. But this extreme period we're in with regards to Gaza, I think that is a sufficient reason to force yourself, even if it's not via the app, but you go on the browser or whatever, or download the app, just to keep the news and the kind of images and the campaigns about Gaza alive and against Zionism and so forth. So, Jazakumullah khair. Next question, Rambai.
Yes, my question deals around procrastination. I assume that there's a life cycle on productivity as well. So how do you deal with that with kids and adults? Is that something that you could elaborate on? Thank you.
Can you explain that a bit, like in what way? Just be sure I understand the question.
Yeah, for instance, when you want your kid to do something and you need to repeat it for a few times lovingly, and then at the end of the
a few times lovingly, and then
you tell them it's time now. And then procrastination for adults as well. How do you deal with it if you have a working team, if you have people around you? Obviously, you need to set an example yourself. How do you elaborate and explain that? Thank you.
Yeah, you must get that a lot.
Good questions. Okay.
Procrastination.
So the first thing with procrastination, normally when you come to tackle procrastination, I ask myself, is there clarity? A lot of times we procrastinate on something that is not clear. Let's say, write me a report. I'm like, okay, what report? How long? What's the topic? What's it about? The more clarity I give, the easier it would follow. For example, I can tell you, start exercising. Okay, which program, strength, cardio, running, like there's so many details. So the more you become very clear.
Reduce uncertainty, be more clear. That actually helps you overcome procrastination. So especially in these big goals, like exercising, or even, as I say, go study the deen, or learn Arabic, or read more Quran. Like, give me clarity. What exactly should we be doing? The second thing is what I call systems and workflows. So figuring out, when will I do this? Let's say memorize Quran. Okay, I'm memorizing Quran, but I'm procrastinating. I don't want to. I delay it. Find out, okay, what method will I follow? When will I memorize Quran? What time will I do it? Who will be my teacher? I say to yourself, go and give da'wah. Like we sometimes make these big goals, or if it's not clear and there's no clear workflow or processes to make it happen. The third is to find out why you are resisting it. Because sometimes it's something, again, sometimes I say time management is emotional management. Sometimes you just hate doing your taxes, right? You just don't want to do your taxes. You're like, I don't want to do it. Even though you have the time, you put it in your calendar, you're going to do it. But you just, I don't want to do my taxes. Or I don't want to do this accounting. Or I don't want to do this thing that I just struggle with. Why are you resisting? Figure out what's inside you that you feel makes you resist. Sometimes it could be your own struggles, personal struggles. Sometimes fear. Sometimes doubt. Sometimes just, again, back to uncertainty as well. And then the other point as well is to, again, especially when it comes to matters of the deen, matters of importance. For example, let's say you're trying to improve your spirituality, you're trying to pray on time, or you're trying to read more Quran, things that are important, and you're procrastinating, seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
from adz and kasal. Adz is feeling like I can't do it, and kasal is laziness. And that's what leads to procrastination also. So sometimes it could be also you asking Allah for protection. And it's part of the battle of the jihad al-nafs and struggle of itself to overcome this thing, especially if it's something meaningful. Especially when it comes to doing da'wah or writing meaningful books or something. Like usually these things, there's a lot of procrastination on it because they're meaningful. And almost like shaitan does not want you to do that. So it's like your own personal battle to overcome that. Inshallah, make it happen. Inshallah.
You know, I discovered something by accident when I was writing my thesis, because it's like a really boring thing and you have to force yourself to do it. And I just kind of made shaitan help me in this. Yeah, it sounds a bit dodgy, but I said, when I'm writing. When I feel like I want to take a break, want to get distracted, I'm going to put mushaf here, right? So instead of going and playing something or checking my phone or whatever, I'm going to read a page of the Quran. So shaitan forced me to, don't get distracted. Keep write this thesis, bro. But the thing that I accidentally realized, I found out later, that our brain and central nervous system, the way it works is by kind of a comparison or like a logarithmic scale, to be a bit more technical rather than like a arithmetic thing. In other words, you don't measure boredom and productivity by any absolute scale like this many kilograms or whatever. You measure it based on what you just did before that, what you can compare it to. So if you're watching something entertaining on TV, watching a football game, whatever, and then you say, okay, I've got to do some work, that's going to be a hard thing for you to do. So the procrastination is going to be easier. But if you instead of going the football, if you say, I'm going to spend just a few minutes just staring at a wall, right? Your it looks a bit weird. What do you call it? You're not overstimulated. You're kind of craving almost some kind of activity now. And now when the work is compared to that would be a kind of an easy kind of sale. There's an article in Islam called "The Benefit of Boredom for Children" by Noor Chowdhury. He's got a few tricks like that as well. So that I would say that was exactly fair. Another question. We have a question from an unknown mystery member of the.
Okay. Productivity is a general term. So I think we need a definition, not necessarily accurate definition, but I think the key thing is measure the productivity. How to say that my productivity improved, or I have a low productivity and I need to improve my productivity. Yeah?
Bismillah. Yeah, interesting, this idea of measuring productivity. I think the way so a lot of time when you define productivity, the textbook definition of productivity is output over input, right? How much output I produce over the input I have. But my challenge to that definition is that it's soulless. It doesn't take into account the human nature, that some days we're tired, some days you're sick, some days you have a personal challenge you're dealing with. So the way that I know to define productivity is saying, how do I manage my energy, my focus, and my time towards the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in its holistic way? Am I managing my energy, my focus, and my time to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala across all my roles? So as a parent, as a spouse, as an employee, as a community member, as a da'i, am I managing this? So some days, especially if I'm healthy and things are good, alhamdulillah, and I say this is the best I could do, the best way I could manage my energy, focus, and time across my roles, alhamdulillah, that's productive. Some days I might be sick, or some days I might have like a tough family situation. I'm not as productive as my normal days, but given the circumstances, the fact that I've attempted to manage my energy, focus, and time in the best possible way, I'll say that day is also productive. So it's hard to measure it from perspective. If we put things output over input, I feel like sometimes we turn ourselves to machines, and then we then feel like failures on days when, honestly speaking, you've tried your best given the circumstances. Wallah.
Jazakallah khair. You had a question? Next question.
Yes, so Bismillah. So the question I had is in the journey to the.
Don't put the mic so close to your mouth, brother. You don't need to eat it.
I let hungry left.
It's okay like that.
So in the journey to the best productivity within your, the ideal productivity for what you can reach, what are the most common mistakes someone can make in their journey?
Good question.
Do you want to have a think about it while we ask another question? Or?
I think I could share something. Inshallah. Right, Bismillah. So the first one is I've noticed this with high performers. People have, in general, high performers. Is they're very.
It's a tough crowd to be in.
Yeah. They're too hard on themselves. Like too hard. Like they beat themselves up so much that your nafs gives up on you. Like, forget it. Then you almost have these days you just burn out for days, right? Versus you need this idea of almost like love and discipline, right? Just like with a child. If you discipline a child too much, they'll rebel, and if you give them too much love, also they'll become spoiled. So this idea of how do I manage myself? How sa'atan wa sa'a? How do I ensure that I don't overdo it? Like people are usually high performers or want to do high performance things. They become way too disciplined, and they make it too harsh. That's the first one. Like they're being too harsh on themselves. The second problem is they become too attached to their calendars, and they become stressed about it. Like, okay, from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, I'm doing this. From 10 to 11, doing this. If a kid falls sick or the wife calls, says, hey, can you just give me some groceries? They lose it. They get so upset. Like, my whole day is ruined and I can't work, right? So they become so attached to the calendar. Now, again, I'm not saying don't plan. Of course, plan, have structures, have routines, tell your family from this time working. But if life happens, things come in your way, sometimes situations comes up which completely throw you off. Being able to readjust and reschedule, to have what's called mind like water, is very special. And to be honest with you, I feel like the model we have is Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Like he would be walking in the cities of Medina, and a little girl would tug on his shirt and say, Ya Rasulullah, I want to show you something. And I'm just thinking, this is the most, you can say, busiest man, most important man, has the most important mission. He could have said, sorry, I'm busy, I'm doing other things. But he would go with her. He would listen to her. Like that for me, and being able to how to do that without losing yourself, without getting frustrated, like the people around you, I'm trying to get this done. So that's the second one, the doing inshallah. So I think I'll leave those two inshallah, just to keep marriage.
Jazakallah khair. Next question.
Can you ask business questions or only productive?
Up to you. If it's
Right.
we can delete it afterwards.
What was your biggest obstacles in your whole road for productive Muslim, and how did you overcome it?
I think the biggest obstacle I was sharing with Sheikh Haytham is people understand the value of this work, or the value of productivity is not a top of mind problem, right? Compared to parenting, or to perhaps marriage challenges, or perhaps even to the things that people worry about the most, health, right? Productivity feels it's nice, it's something you want to be more productive, but it's aspirational. It doesn't feel like a pain point, even though a lot of the issues people face comes down to how they manage their energy, focus, and time. So I think that's sometimes just communicating the value and communicating the importance of this work. And the second one is adults changing adults, right? Most of us here have our own habits by now. Our habits are formed as adults. So how do you go to somebody who has been checking their phone every 10 seconds, who's been struggling with sleep, who has certain nutrition, and then help them to change their habits, change their routines, to restructure their day? That also, that the kind of designing programs, transformational programs that actually do work. That's why I said being very practical, being very specific as a way to make it happen. Those I think were the two main challenges that comes up. But alhamdulillah, I think it's just been a blessing to see that. For me, what's heartwarming is seeing people wanting to change. Sometimes I always tell people, sometimes I get to organizations or families, do this to my employees, or do this to my family. And my first question, is there a desire to change? Or you're forcing them? Because if I'm in a room and people are just forced to attend training, it's a painful workshop. So I've had situations like that where, so unless there's an irada, right, a desire to change, the rest is, it's hard, really, really hard to do anything like that, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Any more questions?
Bismillah. When it comes to habit building, what can we do to stick with the new habit after 1 week or two and make it a lasting habit?
Good question.
So the first thing is to understand what's the niyyah, what's the intention behind the habit, right? Why are we doing this habit? Without the why, it becomes hard. The second thing, the biggest mistake people do with habits is to make it too big. Like, I want to, okay, I'll start exercising. And they have 45 minutes, 1 hour in the gym. They do it for 1 week, 2 weeks. Okay, it's too hard. But if you make it really small, one of the famous quotes is, the smaller the change, the longer it lasts. Right? The smaller the change, the longer it lasts. I think a lot of us, we just take on too much. We get excited, right? The exciting phase. You want to make it so small that even on days you don't feel like it, you'll still do it. That's, for example, memorization of Quran, for example. Someone's, I'll memorize a page a day. And they hardly memorize Quran. That's it might be first 2 weeks, they're excited, they're in there, but naturally you lose motivation. What's the smallest amount that you can stick to, even if you don't feel like it? Let's say it's 2 ayat, for example. That's the smallest amount. Khalas, let's make that your starting page. Now, I'm not saying you're going to end there. You might start with 2 ayat. Over time, your minimum might become 1 page, over time. But at least in that beginning, that sensitive beginning page. The second thing is attach something to it. For example, let's say memorizing Quran, you attach it to right after Fajr. Like, attach with a habit you already have. If you add a habit to something, there's no anchor. Like, what's the anchor for this new habit? Let's say you want to walk, right? So I'll walk after Isha. Khalas, you have Isha, walk. It's very clear. But if you just, I'll walk when, I don't know, anytime I'll walk.
One of our brothers, he memorized the whole Quran just on the bus on the way to uni.
Yeah, so there's anchor and there's a small habit, and it works, inshallah. And in the khair, again, just being intentional. Of course, accountability helps. There are many factors, but make it small, make it specific, attach an anchor. Those 3 things, inshallah, will help it stick, inshallah.
Nice, mashallah. All right, last question. Anyone? Any questions? Who hasn't asked one? Bismillah.
In today's society, there's quite a lot of interdependencies and complexity, and oftentimes things. If you have kids, they have to go to school, and there are preset times, and they have to come home, and they have to do homework, and they have to go to bed at a certain time. And you yourself, you have a job, so you go next. They have to get up at a certain time, which means you have to go to bed at a certain time. And there's so much of these dependencies that they for a large part, as I experience sometimes, is dominated by urgent things, which not necessarily mean that they are really important to me. There are so many things which I think they are important, but I don't get to them because I'm responding to urgent things. I'm looking at the clock, and sometimes I feel a bit enslaved by the clock. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. I have to, right? And I thought, what about the things I really find important? Do you recognize this? Do you think this is it solvable by productivity hacks, or do you think it's a wrong in society, or should it be a fundamental change in someone's life?
That's a great question, and something I've been thinking about recently. I've been thinking about from 2 perspectives. One perspective is this idea of the clock, like you said, and how we organize our life around the clock, and even the time pressure, right? For example, let's say I want to be somewhere at 9 o'clock. The psychological pressure you feel at 8:30, and even though it's just an arbitrary number, but the psychological pressure you feel, it's unnatural. And there's some interesting research about how this idea of the clock, how it creates anxiety and so on and so forth. So there are some structural things, to be honest. But again, at the same time, we need to be practical. This is the kind of the society we're living in. This is how society is organizing itself. The question is, how do we live within this society? How do we manage our time within the society? One is to ensure at least the most important thing is the 5 daily prayers. That is our anchors for the day. So I will say, plan your life around your salah. Don't plan your salah around your life. Right? So those are the 5 anchors. Now, I know in Europe and here, sometimes the shifts in the seasons, right? And people complain about that. I say, subhanAllah, that's the khair that makes us connected with nature. We live in such machine world, modern world that's so disconnected with nature. We don't know when it's like the sun, 9 a.m. is 9 a.m. across the world, but versus we wake up with the sun, before the sun, and it's changed the season. That's a ni'mah that we are connecting with the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala versus trying to be almost outside that creation. So the salah is the kind of foundations, right? Now the question is, how do you organize yourself around that? So this is where the hacks come in. So when do you exercise? When do you nap? When do you get the important things done? Planning as much as possible, delegating as much as possible, cutting down commitments. Sometimes amazing, I've seen sometimes people overcommit themselves in the name of productivity. But you're overcommitting yourself in one area, and like you said, sometimes the important areas are not being dealt with. So you have to sometimes ask yourself, where do I need to manage? Final point is sometimes recognize the season of life. When you have young children, the commitments for your children is much higher when they're older. When you have elderly parents, the commitment to them is higher than when they're more healthier. So being aware of the season of life you're in and just readjusting. But sometimes we think, no, I want to do the exact same thing I used to do when I was in my 20s. Like, no, things change, inshallah. But that comes in. But to your point, there's something definitely structurally to be dealt with. But at the same time, we need to live within what we have, inshallah. Wallah.
Okay, last question. You had a question?
Yes.
Okay, final one, because we have salah and we have to pray. Bismillah.
Jazakallah khairan. I have a lot of questions that I want to ask because productivity is one of my favorite topics. I think I talk a lot about it, but one question I want to ask is, how do you think that, because we live now in a new era where AI and automation is being hot and being taking over slowly, so how do you think that the development of AI will affect productivity positively or negatively?
Good question.
Good question. Honestly,
let me add to that actually, because I was going to ask this. You've been in the game for like 17, 16 years on this thing. Have you noticed any important trends or changes? Yeah, you can add the AI thing as well, but I was just thinking, is there like any big difference between like millennials and Gen Z or something?
Gen Z is stepping up these days. Gen Z respect Gen Z. They've stepped up, mashallah. No, the AI thing, honestly, no one really knows, to be honest. Yes, in the workspace, yes, you can see improvement in productivity in general, but I feel like what's going to stand out more, where people will be craving more, is authenticity, right? We'll be craving an article that's written by real people. We'll be craving a podcast with real human beings. We'll be craving authenticity. So I feel like you can outsource everything, intelligence, etc., but you cannot outsource spirituality. You cannot outsource the thing that makes a human. So I feel like this is where values, akhlaq, amana, like these things you cannot outsource AI. So I feel like there'll be as Muslims, like this is where we fill in the void. Because once so Western psychology, Western society is built on reason and logic, right? And I feel Islamic psychology is interesting. There's a lot of spirituality, values, akhlaq, adab, like these things that we often don't talk about. So I think there'll be a lot of emphasis on that in the way we deal with each other, when we work with each other in this stage of AI. And I think there's something for us to contribute to society on how can we live a more authentic life, how to bring spirituality and how we do things, meaning, purpose, values. Those things will stand out. And as Muslims, we play a big role in that, inshallah.
I've got just some quick fire questions to end with.
Uh-oh.
So just
shoot
from the hip. Yeah. What's one book or audiobook that you read recently that you would recommend?
Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. It's one of the few books on productivity that finally kind of goes against that hustle culture, busy, get things done. It's called Slow Productivity.
Okay, excellent. What gadget other than your phone do you rely on the most?
Oh, my Kindle. I guess I read a lot. I use it a lot, so Kindle.
Excellent. And finally, if there's one thing, finish the sentence. If there's one thing that the audience needs to remember from this podcast, it would be?
Have sincere intentions and work hard.
Excellent. Jazakumullah khairan. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. All right. Jazakumullah khairan, brothers and sisters. Jazakumullah khairan, Mohammed Faris, Practical Muslim. Check it out. Jazakumullah khairan, brothers and sisters at home, for watching. If you like this podcast, give a like and share. Before you delete all your social media apps, subscribe to Islam 2.1. Let us know in the comments, any other questions you want to ask. We want to bring them on again and contribute more. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.